Hello, everybody. It's Twanna here. I'm going to check my mic over here. It is not blinking me, telling me it's on mute this week, so I think I'm okay this week. Thank you for joining me. I do appreciate it. And let me put my comments on over there. I just want to check one more time. If you can hear me, go ahead and drop one in the comments, or you can just say, I hear you. So, this is your first time joining me. I am Dr. Twanna Carter, and as a career coach, I empower busy women execs tackling imposter syndrome, self criticism, and doubt to alleviate stress so that they can find peace of mind and focus on excelling in their career. And just in case you want to know what I'm talking about today, I am talking about perfectionism or standards, how women self sabotage themselves in the workplace. At the end of the day, perfectionism and high standards can be both a blessing and a curse, right? Especially for women in the workplace, because while you're striving for excellence, that can lead to success when you put out those standards and here's what I want to be, here's what I want to do, here's what it takes to get there. That can lead to success, right? Growth and success. But it can also morph into self sabotage when it becomes a never ending quest for the unattainable. And so, again, thank you and welcome. I want to welcome everybody, those of you that are seeing this on LinkedIn. Welcome and thanks for coming. Those of you seeing on Facebook, whether it's my Facebook page, my Facebook business page, or in my groups, Courage to Transition Your Career and Women on a Mission, Encourage to Launch Your Own Business, you too are welcome today. Or if you're catching this on YouTube or on Twitter, welcome everybody right into gate to again. Oh, trying to say everything at one time. And today, if you're just joining me, I'm talking about perfectionism or standards, how women self sabotage in the place. At the end of the day, as women continue to break through barriers in their careers, it's really crucial to understand the difference between healthy standards and detrimental perfectionism. So let's jump in and start looking at the difference between the two, healthy standards and perfectionism, as well as how to overcome that if you tiptoed across the line or if you just literally fell off the train onto the perfectionism side. We're going to give you some tips as well how you can overcome that. So let's hop right in, and let me say that if you got comments and questions, I love it. Drop it in the comments. I've got an eye out down here so I can see it when you pop it in there. So number one, here's the thing: unreasonably high expectations, right? Not expectations and not just high expectations, but unreasonably high expectations, right? And that setting high expectations, again, that's a motivator. It really can be a motivator for personal growth as well as professional growth. However, women have a tendency to fall prey into the trap of setting unreasonably high expectations for themselves, right? Which can cross that line over into perfection, right? And this can lead to a constant feeling of, I'm not good enough, I'm not doing it right. If I just worked a little harder, I could do it better. Feelings of inadequacy, burnout, and eventually a fear of failure because you have so much stuff you're trying to do at one time. You're scared to death that you may drop any ball at one time. So, your high expectations have now become a detriment because they're stressing you out, leading you down the burnout path, and causes procrastination, right? We'll talk about that one next. To avoid, all right, so let's say this again: to avoid self sabotage, it's important to set realistic goals. And I know that can be tough sometimes, right? It can be tough. I know as an African American child growing up, I was always told you got to work twice as hard as anybody else to be seen as normal. That's a lot of stress to put on a kid. It came from a good place, don't get me wrong. It came from a good place, but that was a lot of stress to put on the kid and a lot of stress to put on a teenager, a lot of stress to put on an adult who went through much of her adulthood believing I gotta be twice, work twice as hard, be twice as good as anybody else to be seen as normal. That's a lot of stress. That's a lot of pressure. And so that's how come, certainly African American women and Latina women will do the same thing. Sometimes we feel like we're carrying our culture. And so we don't want to make mistakes and disappoint our culture. Still, it's a lot of stress to put on ourselves. And so to avoid that self-sabotage, make sure that your goals are reasonable and make sure they're your goals. Let me say that again. Make sure they are your goals, not just your family's goal or your mom's goal or your boyfriend's goal or your husband's goal, your professor's goal, your boss's goal. No, they should be your goals, right? Reasonable goals that are yours that you feel motivated to achieve. Okay. And also as you complete a goal, I actually set intentions now. Intentions are just much gentler than setting a goal. But if whether you set goals or intention, whenever you reach the goal, you accomplish a goal or you reach the intention, acknowledge that. Take a time out, like stop, acknowledge it and celebrate. Celebrate the achievements as you go along because otherwise you're like, check next goal, check next thing. And it becomes like being a hamster on a hamster wheel. You're running around and around after the next achievement, the next accomplishment over and over and over again, which of course leads to burnout and also fear of failure. And that's the next thing, right? On the list I'm going to talk about. And for those of you that are leaders, if you're a manager, supervisor, ask yourself this question. Do you really need to do everything yourself? Or is there staff in your office that you're failing to develop for their next best level because you're so occupied with trying to do it all and do it perfectly? Because I know how I want it done, and I'm the only person that can ever do it like I want to do it, right? Again, unreasonable expectations. Make sure your expectations are reasonable. And if you have a staff, if you lead people, part of our goals as leaders is always to train the next group of leaders, right? And so sometimes I can, talk to folks, and if I can't get them to do things for themselves, I can kind of get them to do things for other folks. So you people out there that fall into that category, if you're doing it all yourself, all the tasks, all the things every day, all day, are you training your staff? Are they ready for the next next level? All right. So that's number one. That was a lot for number one. All right. Here's number two: fear of failure and procrastination. This is what happens when you set unrealistically high expectations. Fear of failure is very common issue that can manifest, and it manifests itself in the form of procrastination or avoiding a challenging task altogether, right? And let me say that anybody can be prone to procrastination, because I had about last week. I had a whole thing, right? And the thing is to recognize it, right? And to understand that women might be more prone to this type of self-sabotage because of societal pressures to be perfect and because we don't want to disappoint others. And that was my thing. I didn't want to disappoint somebody. So when they asked me to do something, I was gripped by the fear of failing. What if I did this and I failed and this person didn't get the help that they needed? And I literally sat for about 48 hours stuck, procrastinating. I can't do it. I can't do it. And finally, I had to say, stop. What's the fear here? My fear was fear of failure. My fear was if I took this step, someone else wasn't going to act, do, or behave the way I needed them to make the other person successful. And as I always tell my clients, I had to take my own medicine. When you set up success for yourself, always, never predicate your success upon what someone else will do. You don't control that. You don't control their brain, how they think, how they walk, how they talk. You don't control any of that. Always predicate your success upon what you control and what you can do. right? So when I took that step back and had to like claim, name it, I am procrastinating. Why? What is the fear? I fear failing this person. If I do this, it may not work. And it's like you don't have any control over whether it works or not. Your control over is doing the task that you were asked to do. Just do it. Whatever happens is fine. It happens, it happens, right? Good news is I stopped procrastinating, number one, but I did let that fear fall away. I can't predict someone else's behavior. It's not in my control. And I did my piece of it and it still came out well. So it was a success. But that's what you really have to do, because really it's natural to fear, right? But it's natural to fear failure, rather. It's important to understand and use failure as a growth, as a teaching point, as a normal part of development, right? Embrace failure just like software engineers do, right? They fail a lot because they code and it doesn't work. So they didn't just go, oh, I failed, I must not be. No, they go back and debug. And I love that term. They go back and fix it, but they call it debugging, right? So if you fail, right, go back and debug it. Just fix it, do it better. I could have done, what I should have done, what would have worked. Look at that. Okay. And then also is a way to pull yourself from disappointing others. You don't have control over how someone else feels. So if they're disappointed, that's their choice to be disappointed, not yours. Okay. And I know that a lot of us as women, we get caught up in not wanting to disappoint. So if I'm perfect, I won't disappoint. And neither of those are not true. Number one, you can't be perfect. But number two, you can be perfect and still disappoint, right? If it were possible. If you're perfect, people can still be disappointed. You don't control what people think, what they say, what they do. And so when you're kind of braced, like, I can't fail. Oh my God, what are they gonna think about me? Remind yourself, oh, that's right. I don't control their brain. I can't control what they're thinking anyway. Right? This formula is really helpful for dropping that fear of failure and disappointing people. Okay. And really embrace failure as a learning opportunity can help you reduce anxiety and then foster a more productive mindset for you, probably for your team too, who are running around scared to death of making mistake or failing because they think you're going to be all up in the uproar if it happens, right? So, we teach folks just by our behavior and what we do, right? So number three, that was a lot for number two as well. That was a lot. You know, if it was a lot for you, put a lot in the comments down there. It was a lot. Number three, imposter syndrome. I do have a series of videos on the 5 types of imposter syndrome, so I won't go into depth into all the 5 types. You can read that. You can look me up on medium.com. I've written a series of 5 articles about imposter syndrome and the 5 different types there as well. So imposter syndrome, of course, is just this phenomenon where people doubt their own accomplishments and they fear being exposed as a fraud. I'm not doing enough. I'm not accomplishing enough. If I were perfect, I could. You can see how that kind of starts to snowball, right? Women are typically more likely to experience imposter syndrome. Doesn't mean men can't experience it, because they do. Men in education can experience or have. Research has shown that they experience imposter syndrome at a higher rate than women do in education anyway. Okay, so imposter syndrome leads to self-sabotage because you start you doubt yourself, right? So you start taking to complete a task, to complete a project. You're like, well, it can't be done right, so I got to add some more stuff onto it. And so, really, it's important to overcome this by recognizing and challenging the self-doubt, right? I tell my clients, collect data. If this is not done right, if I could have done better, collect the data. Who says you could have done it better? Where's the data that says that? Where's the data that says what you did isn't good enough? Challenge it, right? Seek support from your mentors, seek support from your sponsors or your colleagues, but they got to be the right colleagues. right? And I have a video out there as well about self sabotaging, or I'm sorry, sabotaging colleagues. You want to see that one because you got to have the right type of colleague, because some of them will feed you stuff to see you fail, right? So you want to be sure you're talking to the right type of colleagues, right? And also, just as important, practice self compassion, right? I like to have my clients just get a picture of yourself younger. If you can find one like 4 or 5 or 6 years old, and when you're railing on yourself and self doubt and you're not this or you're not good enough and all that, pull up that picture of yourself as a younger person and say those words to the picture. I haven't found anybody yet that said that to the picture, because we tend to have compassion for children. Understand, we're big people. We're still kids. On that person is still there on the inside. We just have all grown up, but that person is there. If you wouldn't say it to a child, or you wouldn't say it to your best friend's child, or even your child, probably shouldn't say it to yourself as well. I'm just saying. Okay. Now, number 4, overworking. What happens is if we doubt ourselves or we have these impossibly high standards, we overwork because I got to achieve way more than everybody else because my standards. So I have a Facebook user that says, "Great idea. Thank you. Appreciate it." Absolutely. She's talking about how to show ourselves self compassion. It's so important. It is so important to be to show yourself compassion. And remember, how we treat ourselves is how we teach other folks to treat us. That's always important, right? And so, overworking, when we have these impossibly high standards, or we try to be perfect, we end up overworking ourselves. And then, along with overwork comes, of course, neglecting self care. Because, say it with me, self care is not selfish. Two different things, right? And women oftentimes we feel the need to prove American, Asian. We sometimes we want to prove ourselves in the workplace because sometimes we're the only one or one of two, so very few in the workplace, right? And we'll do that by working, not saying no. Oh, I can do that too. Oh, another project, yes, I can do that too. Oh, sure, I can do that too. Because again, we don't want to disappoint. And sometimes we feel like we're carrying our culture with us, and we don't want to disappoint our ancestors. We don't want to disappoint, our friends, our families, et cetera, et cetera. And so, for temporary, for a little bit, this can lead to success, but over the long run, too many responsibilities, right? They start to wear you out and they result in burnout. And also, if you're working these things, you don't have a work-life balance, right? And people talk about, is it, is will it always be balanced? No, it's not always going to be balanced. Not like how Oprah said it. You can have it all, but you can't have it all at one time. Certainly, if you're working all the time, you're overworked, neglecting self-care, you're not going to have your health all the time. You're not going to have a nice family life, just a personal. You're not going to have that by overworking, right? And so you do have to learn to prioritize self-care, learn to prioritize that self-care, right? And I put out a video, I think it was yesterday, about setting boundaries and learning to say no. 6 words. When people ask you to do something, say, "Let me get back to you." Just those 6 words. Let me get back to you. When you're with people, they understand that if you're there and they ask you to do something, 9 times out of 10, 9.9 times out of 10, you're not going to tell them no. Why? Because women tend not to want to disappoint people. So just don't make a decision in the moment. Say, "Let me get back to you." Those 6 words. Let me get back to you in 15. Let me get back to you in 20. Let me get back to you in about an hour or so. Let me get back to you tomorrow. All right. You don't have to make a decision in the moment, because once you give yourself space and you think about it, you do tend to adhere to your boundaries. Okay. So, healthy boundaries is really essential for long-term success and well-being. Taking on too many projects, people will tell you, and I've heard it before because I've heard it about me. I used to have this issue. "Oh, you're so dependable. Oh, you're so reliable. We can always trust on you." you to do what you said you're gonna do. Your word is your bond, and I know you'll get it done. But they kept piling on work and piling on work and piling on work and piling on work and piling on work, which means that you get more stress, you get burned out, and then you're not any good to anybody. So definitely to avoid, overworking and neglecting self-care, prioritize self-care because again, say it all together. Self-care is not selfish. Two different things. Okay. And the fifth tip that I have for you today is downplaying your achievements. If you're downplaying, you're probably on that scale of impossibly high standards because, well, I can't accept congratulations for this because it wasn't good enough. I can't accept praise for completing this because it wasn't good enough. I'm not good enough. I didn't do work hard enough. I could have made it perfect. I could have done this, right? So if that's difficulty accepting praise or you downplay your achievements, right? Go ahead and when someone compliments you, take a deep breath and say, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for recognizing my hard work. Thank you for recognizing the work that I put into this. Because this is a form of self sabotage. It reinforces when you downplay your achievements and you find and you're not accepting praise, it reinforces that sense of inadequacy and it prevents you from recognizing all of your true value, right? A lot of ladies that I have that come to me for coaching because they, it's like I can't seem to, I'm getting interviews or I'm not getting, I'm doing is it fought one of several things. I'm submitting applications and not getting interviews, or I'm getting interviews but not getting any callbacks. Or the first one is I can't even bring myself to apply for the job. Why? Because their value. Why? Because they either have impossibly high standards or they have perfectionistic tendencies. And so they're downplaying their own value. And when they come to me, and I often say, yeah, you don't want that job because that's two jobs under what you're doing right now. You got to figure that if you're doing twice the work in your job to be thought of as normal, you're doing twice the work and sometimes three, but only getting paid once. If you're going to do that, you might as well see a career coach and get the job 2 or 3 steps above and get paid for it as well. That's what I help my ladies do. And they're always amazed, right? When they come and I say, nah, that I can see this, I hear what you're saying, but yeah, you're about 2 jobs beneath where you should be. And when I come in and they actually see their value, they stop downplaying their value and they accept their praise and they understand like, holy smoke, they're getting me really cheap. Because sometimes we are doing 2 to 3 times the work for one pay. And it's 30, 40, $50,000 less than what your true value is. All right. And so that's the importance of setting reasonable standards. And it's okay to have high standards, but not impossibly high standards. Right. And so understanding the difference between healthy standards and perfectionism is really the key to avoiding self-sabotage in the workplace. Again, yes, you can have standards. It's okay to have standards. So you don't hear me say you should have no standards. No, 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 no. Because I have standards. I have high standards. But I had to learn to walk them back from unreasonably high standards. I had to learn to walk them back from being perfect because it's detrimental to your job, to those around you, because you tend to not see people that work for you doing their jobs either. Because if you can't do your job well, they must not be doing theirs either. And so it really is about acknowledging and addressing, right, these common issues. Women can empower themselves by reaching their full potential and foster a healthier mindset and achieve that long lasting success without feeling like success is synonymous with stress to freak out. All right. So that is what I have for you today. Thank you so much for those of you that hung in there. And I appreciate your comments. If you're hearing this and this really resonates with you, go ahead and drop career in the comments and I'll reach out to you and set up it's absolutely free career solution call. Let's talk about your goals, where you are and where you're trying to get to. And for some of you, if it's just to relieve that stress of perfectionism and impossibly high standards, I do that too. And you'd be amazed at how much better you feel. You'll also be amazed at how quickly you can go out and apply for jobs that actually meet your value that you actually have that you're no longer hiding. Right? So be back here next week, same time, same place 8:35 Eastern Time, 7:35 Central Time, and 5:35 Pacific Time out in California. For those of you that catch us on the replay, I appreciate you for doing that. Drop replay in the comments for me. And if you have a comment or suggestion, to the conversation, always drop it in the comments. I'll always circle back to answer those. All right. Take care. Bye bye.